The obese girl's dance card stayed empty all night, until the wealthy rancher wrote his name on every line. "You promised me 2 years ago." Nora stood in the dressing room doorway, hands twisting in her apron. She had practiced the words all morning. They came out smaller than she meant. Mrs. Whitmore didn't look up. "Promised what, dear?" "You said one day you'd let me dance. At the harvest ball. If I worked hard enough." The room stilled. 3 girls in half-laced corsets turned. Emma Harrison's mouth curved. Margaret bit back a laugh. Mrs. Whitmore set down her pen and finally looked at Nora, the way someone looks at furniture that made a sound. "That's for people like them," she said, flicking toward the girls. "Not people like you." "But you said, know your place. You're made for mending, not dancing." Nora swallowed the rest, returned to the floor with pins between her teeth, knees aching against cold wood. "Tighter, Nora," Emma said, extending her arm. "I need to look impressive enough for that proud rancher to notice me." The girls giggled. "Did you see him at the auction?" Margaret whispered, arms crossed like he owned the world. "He looked at me in church," Catherine added. "He never dances," Emma said. "Maybe tonight he will." They laughed while Nora pinned silk she would never wear, eyes lowered. She told herself it did not hurt to be invisible. They swept out in perfume and laughter. Silence followed. Nora closed her eyes. Last year, Thomas Reed had smiled at her, then pulled away. "Your waist is too big to hold. Perhaps you should sit and watch." Loud enough for others. He danced 3 songs with her younger sister. A month later, he proposed. Nora never returned to a dance. A knock pulled her back. "Nora." Mrs. Whitmore stood in the doorway. "Miss Catherine is ill. We need someone to fill her spot." Nora's heart stopped. "Tonight? We can't have uneven numbers." "You've asked for years," Mrs. Whitmore said. "Be presentable. Don't embarrass us. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." She ran home. "Sarah, I need a dress. Anything." Her sister-in-law barely looked up. "Nothing I own would fit you." No malice. Just fact. Nora found scissors. Scraps of blue cotton from an old curtain. Lace from a tablecloth. Thread from a worn petticoat. She worked past midnight. Fingers bled. She wrapped them and kept sewing. Something inside her, still alive after a year, refused to stay hidden. By 3 in the morning, she had a dress. Patchwork. Blue. Hers. The ballroom blazed with candlelight. Silk and satin spun like bright flowers. Nora stood near the far wall, dance card trembling. Blank lines. Margaret glided in the ivory satin Nora had sewn that afternoon. Emma laughed with a young man. Neither noticed her. Near the punch table, boys leaned together. Did Catherine turn into a cow overnight? "Is that a curtain she's wearing?" someone muttered. Another scoffed. "I wouldn't hold that waist for $100. The card shook harder. Nora fixed her eyes on the window, breathed through her nose. Then the room shifted. Across the ballroom, Ethan Calloway went still. Tall, broad-shouldered, serious more than handsome. He had been standing with his brother James, counting minutes until he could leave. The laughter reached him. His jaw tightened. James leaned in. "Don't." Ethan said nothing. "She's a domestic. Every family will talk." But he watched Nora, the shaking card, the handmade dress, the way she stared at the window like she might step through it. He set down his glass. Let them talk. He crossed the ballroom. The crowd parted. He passed Emma, who straightened. Past Margaret, who lifted her chin. He stopped in front of the girl with the empty card. Nora looked up. Up close, he looked less like a legend, more like a man. Dust still faint on his boot. A crease between his brows. He held out his hand for her card. Numb, she gave it. He signed the first line. Then the second. Then every line. Emma froze. Margaret's smile thinned. A woman cleared her throat. "Mr. Calloway, Miss Wilson is a domestic. She doesn't belong among our..." He didn't look away. May I have this dance? She stared at his hand. Steady. Calloused like hers. Is this a joke? Why? She whispered. Because I'd like to. No showmanship. No mockery. Her fingers trembled as she placed them in his. Grip closed, firm, certain. On the floor she could barely breathe. When his hand settled at her waist, memory struck fast and cruel. Too big to hold. Her body stiffened. His hand did not move, loosen, hesitate. Is this all right? She whispered. Holding me. He drew her closer. Very. One word. Solid as oak. They danced while the room watched. She felt Emma's stare like heat. Margaret's like cold water. She felt the moment the room understood he would not stop, would not apologize, would not pretend. And slowly, she stopped waiting for him to let go. After, he walked her back to the chairs. They stood side by side in careful silence. Nora broke it first. I don't believe we were properly introduced. I know who you are. But you don't know me. Nora, he said. Nora Wilson. She looked at him, startled. I asked James before I crossed the room. I'm Ethan Calloway. I know. A small pause. Why ask my name before you knew if I'd accept? I wanted to know it, he said. In case you didn't. Her breath caught. His gaze drifted to her dress, the uneven seams, the meeting of two blues where fabric had run short. You made this. Her fingers brushed the shoulder stitching. Only scraps. Blue suits you. Simple, no flourish. She didn't know what to do with that. Later, when the crowd drifted to the bonfire, Nora slipped into the garden. Music filtered through the windows. She closed her eyes and swayed, small, private, hers alone. Free. When she opened them, he stood at the edge of the path. She startled. I didn't hear you. You looked like you were somewhere good. She should go inside. She felt it. People will talk, she said. More than they already are. They will. You can survive that. I cannot. What costs nothing for you costs everything for me. He didn't rush. I know. Then carefully, I'm not asking you to pretend tonight didn't happen. I'm asking if you'd like to dance once more. Where no one is watching. He held out his hand. Your choice. She thought of Thomas. Of 3 songs. She took his hand. They danced in the dark. Music faint, lantern light soft. His hand steady at her back. Her forehead rested against his shoulder. He didn't shift. Didn't loosen. She let herself have it. The simple feeling of being held without calculation. The garden door burst open. Lantern light cut across them. Mrs. Whitmore stood rigid. An unwed woman, alone, with a man in the dark. You drag your indecency into shadows and shame my household. That is enough. Ethan's voice quiet. Absolute. Mr. Calloway, you do not understand what kind of woman we were dancing. He stepped forward, firm, not aggressive. 20 feet from a ballroom full of witnesses. You will not speak about her that way. I will speak as facts demand. The fact is she danced with me at my request. If there is impropriety, direct it at me. Silence. Mrs. Whitmore looked between them, found no apology in his face, and turned back to the house. Nora stood motionless. She had expected him to step away when the air turned cold. He hadn't. She didn't know what to do with that. By morning, she was dismissed. A folded note on the mending table bore her name, neat across the page. By evening, her brother met her at the door, hat in hand. The town is talking, he said, avoiding her eyes. Being seen alone with a man like that, it reflects on us. On my wife. I can't have that under my roof. I danced, she said. He asked me. I danced. You put yourself in a position. I stood against a wall all evening with an empty card. He crossed a room full of women and asked me. His jaw tightened. He looked away. I can't, he said quietly. I'm sorry. The door shut. Nora stood in the road, one trunk at her feet, blue dress clutched to her chest, the night over. She did not cry. He hadn't let go when it became difficult. It would not shelter her. It would not undo what was done. But she held that small, steady moment anyway. Blue. Hers. The boarding house on Mill Street smelled like lye soap and old wood. Ruth Hadley stood behind the counter, ledger in hand, eyes sharp. Nora Wilson. The girl from the Whitmore ball. Nora set her coins on the counter. I can pay. Ruth counted slowly. Room 6. End of the hall. Keep quiet and we'll manage. The room could be crossed in 4 steps. Iron bed. 1 stubborn window. Nora hung the blue dress on the hook. The only beautiful thing left. The first 3 days, nobody spoke. The women watched her with sideways glances, pulling skirts closer, like shame was catching. On the 4th morning, Dolly sat on the stairs, picking her nails. So you're the one who danced with Calloway. Nora kept her eyes down. Excuse me. Dolly tilted her head. Where is he now? Did he get what he wanted? It wasn't like that. Oh, it's always like that. Dolly leaned back. Men don't marry bodies like yours, sweetheart. They rent them. The hallway went quiet. Nobody corrected her. Nora walked past, into her room, shut the door, pressed her back against it. The blue dress hung on the hook. Why did I go? Why did I take his hand? Why did I let myself believe he could see anything worth seeing? She lay on the iron bed, face in the pillow, cried until her ribs ached. Days blurred. Mending work, the only skill anyone would pay for. The women talked around her, never to her. The dance began to feel imagined. A fever dream. Or a trick. A rich man's amusement on a slow evening. Cruelty dressed in a firm hand, quiet voice, the word, very. On the 6th day, boots on the porch. Heavy. Then Ruth Hadley's sharp voice. Mr. Calloway, this is a women's boarding house. You can't just. I'm not coming inside. Nora's needle stopped mid-stitch. That voice. Low, steady. She crept to the top of the stairs. He stood on the porch, hat in hand. Ruth planted in the doorway. I need to speak with Miss Wilson. Miss Wilson is a resident. She doesn't receive gentlemen callers. It's not a social call. Ruth crossed her arms. Then what is it? She's alone. Lost her position. Family turned her out. I have a ranch house with spare rooms and work. Honest employment. Room, board, wages. Ruth's eyes narrowed. And the whole town will say you're keeping her. The whole town can say what it likes. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they'll drag through the mud. Nora came down the stairs. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met. Breathless. Miss Wilson, he said carefully. I have work at my ranch. Cooking, keeping house. Paid position. Your own room with a lock. Dolly appeared. Oh, I'm sure there's a lock. Question is who has the key. Ethan didn't look at her. You don't owe me an answer now, he said quietly. Offer stands. Nora looked at his face, open, patient, wanted to say yes more than anything. But Dolly's words rang. Men don't marry bodies like yours. They rent them. Every woman would say she'd proven them right. I can't, she whispered. Something crossed his face. Not anger. He nodded. Walked down, mounted his horse, rode away. Nora stood shaking. Dolly patted her shoulder. Smart girl. It didn't feel smart. The worst thing she'd ever done. After that, he didn't come back. But he didn't disappear. A bag of flour appeared. No name, no note. Ruth frowned. Firewood stacked against the wall. Nobody claimed it. On Saturday, Nora went to pay her second week's rent. Ruth's face shifted. Somebody already settled your account. Who? Didn't say. Just left coin. Nora's hands went cold. He wasn't pushing, making demands. Simply there, beyond her shame, ensuring she was fed, warm, her rent paid. Every quiet kindness deepened the accusation. Every bag of flour, every paid bill confirmed what Dolly believed. Sunday at church. Last pew. eyes on her lap. Thomas Reed sat with her sister, his arm along the pew. Glanced back once, saw Nora. Passed over her like an empty chair. After service, Mr. Blackwell caught her arm. Stern. Miss Wilson. Town council wants to speak Tuesday morning. About your situation, debts, impropriety. Concern to this community. What's to be done with you? Like a stray animal. A problem to be solved. She walked back, fists clenched, throat burning. That night, on the iron bed, she held the blue dress in her lap. Remembered sewing it, heard the garden music, felt the hand he held out. Pressed the dress to her chest like the night her brother locked the door. Tuesday morning. 9 o'clock. Nora had expected the mayor. Perhaps the reverend. She had dressed carefully, hands smoothing the front of her skirt in the boarding house mirror, telling herself it was only a formality. A conversation. Something that could be walked away from. She had not expected benches packed wall to wall with people she had known her entire life, watching her walk to the front of the room like she was already convicted of something. Mayor Dawson sat at the head table, hands folded. On the second bench, arms crossed and mouth already curved, sat Thomas Reed. Miss Wilson. The mayor's voice filled the room. Several concerned citizens have raised issues regarding your conduct. He read from his paper. The impropriety at the ball. Her dismissal. Her inability to maintain steady employment. Her presence, that was the word he used, her presence, as a disruption to the moral order of Redemption Creek. He spoke slowly and carefully, the way men speak when they have already decided and simply need the words to catch up. We believe we've found an arrangement that solves the problem for everyone. The side door opened. Garrett Holloway walked in. Nora knew him the way everyone in Redemption Creek knew him. Not well, but enough. 62 years old. Widowed 3 times. His first wife had died in childbirth. His second had disappeared one winter, and nobody had asked many questions because Garrett paid his taxes on time. His third wife had died of fever. Some people in town said she had stopped eating months before she went. He looked at Nora. Not at her face. His eyes moved slowly, across her shoulders, her arms, her hips, the patient, assessing look of a man evaluating a purchase he intended to get full use from. Miss Wilson. His voice was unhurried. You need a home. I need a wife. A woman who is strong and young and built to bear children. I'm prepared to offer you a roof, security, and the respectability you have lost. The room murmured. Approving. Relieved, almost, the way a room sounds when a problem is being neatly resolved. Mr. Holloway is offering this out of Christian charity, the mayor added. You won't find a better offer, Garrett said. Not in your condition. From the second bench, Thomas Reed leaned forward. Take it, Nora. It's more than you deserve. That one landed differently than the rest. Not because it was crueler, it wasn't not by much, but because it came from the mouth of a man who had once taken her hand and led her to a dance floor and then decided, in front of everyone, that she wasn't worth the trouble of holding. That voice had no business weighing in on what she deserved. A contract appeared on the table. A pen beside it. Garrett's name already signed in clean black ink, waiting for hers. Nora stood and walked to the table. She picked up the pen. Her hand was not steady. She thought about the boarding house room, the narrow cot, Dolly's kindness, how long that kindness could realistically last. She thought about her brother's door closing, the empty dance card, the road she had stood on alone with one trunk and a dress made from curtain scraps. She lowered the pen toward the paper. The front door opened. The room turned. Ethan Calloway stood in the doorway with dust on his boots and his hat in his hand, breathing like a man who had ridden without stopping. He took in the room in one glance. The mayor, the contract, Garrett, Thomas, Nora standing at the table with a pen in her shaking hand. He walked to her. Steady. Not rushed. Not angry. He stopped beside her chair and spoke quietly enough that it was almost only for her. If you sign that, I won't stop you. His jaw was tight. His eyes were on her face, Not the contract, not the room. But don't sign it because you think this is all you're worth. The mayor rose to his feet. Mr. Calloway, this is a private council matter. She is sitting in a room full of people who have already decided her life for her. Ethan's voice stayed even. Nothing about this is private. The mayor sat back down. Garrett stepped forward. Now hold on just a moment. I'm not talking to you. Ethan didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on Nora. Just Nora. Her throat was tight. What other choice do I have? Me. The room stopped breathing. Marry me, Nora. From the second bench came a short, sharp laugh. Thomas Reed, shaking his head. You cannot be serious. Look at her. Ethan turned his head slowly toward Thomas. He didn't speak. He simply looked at him, steadily and without hurry, until Thomas dropped his eyes to the floor and left them there. Nora's voice came out barely above a whisper. You don't have to do this. I know. People will say you've lost your mind. They've been saying that since I signed your dance card. The beat. Something in his face that was not quite a smile but close. Say yes or say no. But don't say no because you think I'm being kind. I'm not being kind. I'm certain. She looked at the contract on the table. At Garrett's cold, waiting face. At the room full of people who had brought her here to be sorted and settled and put away where she wouldn't cause trouble. Then she looked at Ethan. Yes. The Reverend married them that same afternoon in the small room behind the church. No flowers. No guests. No celebration of any kind. Ethan produced a plain gold band from his vest pocket, and something about the ease with which he found it, no searching, no fumbling, made her wonder how long it had been sitting there. They rode to the ranch in his wagon as the sun began to drop. Nora sat beside him with her hands folded in her lap and a blue patchwork dress pressed smooth beneath her palms. It was the only good thing she owned. She was married to the most powerful rancher in the territory. To a man who had crossed a ballroom for her and stepped in front of an accusation and ridden hard to a town hall to stop her from signing her life to the wrong person. And she was still, in the quietest part of herself, absolutely certain it was pity. She called him Mr. Calloway for 12 days. He never corrected her. Never pushed. Never tested the invisible line she had drawn through every room, this far and no further. And he seemed to understand it without being told, the way a man understands weather. He gave her the bedroom. When she protested, he said simply, "The door has a lock on the inside," and walked away. The house functioned. It didn't quite live. No curtains, no flowers. Meals of bread and cold meat, eaten mostly in silence at opposite ends of a long table. But she began, slowly, to move through it, cleaned the kitchen one morning, organized the pantry the next, mended the crooked curtain rod. He noticed everything, said almost nothing. Every morning, the fire was lit when she came downstairs. Water drawn. Firewood stacked neatly by the door. Small, wordless things there before she thought to need them. One afternoon a chair appeared on the porch, right height for a woman, with a cushion she had never mentioned. She stood looking at it before she sat. He was speaking. Just not in words. One evening she thought she was alone. His mother's music box sat on the mantel, small and brass, worn smooth. She wound it without thinking, the melody slow, sweet, old. She stood listening. Then, without deciding, she began to move, not performing, not really dancing, just swaying the way she only allowed herself when no one was watching. Unheld. Unguarded. Free in the particular way that comes when you believe you are invisible. She turned. He was in the doorway. I didn't know you were there. Her voice thin. He stepped inside. Closed the door. The music box played. He looked at her, not measuring or dismissing, then crossed the room and extended his hand. You don't have to. I know. She took it. They moved slowly, finding rhythm together. Then his grip shifted, hands settled at her waist, firm, not cautious, and he drew her closer until no careful distance remained. her breath caught and stayed. He didn't apologize. His hand pressed warm and broad against the small of her back, holding her like no one had, as if there were no too much, no wrong body, just hers, simply here, simply enough. You dance when you think no one's watching. His voice low, close to her ear. She couldn't speak. Fingers curled into the front of his shirt. You don't have to hide from me, Nora. She trembled. He rested his forehead against hers, his breath, heartbeat, the steadiness of him, and for a suspended moment the house was just that, the two of them, slow winding music, warmth of being held without condition. Then he stepped back. Gently. Deliberately. Good night, Nora. He left her in the middle of the room, breathless, shaking, more awake than she had felt in years. 3 days later she rode into town for supplies. Outside the general store, women appeared as they always did, bright smiles, careful words, eyes doing something else entirely. Nora, we haven't seen you in ages. He keeps you all the way out at that ranch. So thoughtful, bringing everything himself. Saving you the trip. The pause. A smaller smile. Saving you from all the eye attention. She rode home in silence. The meaning arrived slowly, the way cold does, settling in the bones until warmth was forgotten. He's ashamed of you. Keeping you hidden. A man like him, a wife like you, of course he keeps you behind doors. She sat in the dark kitchen, arms crossed, old wound finding its old shape. The next morning, Ethan came into the kitchen while she stood at the window. We're going to town. Market day. Crowded. Every head turned when Ethan helped his wife down from the wagon, palm flat against her back. He stayed there, didn't leave her at the door, didn't drift ahead. Walked in beside her, hands steady, unhurried, unashamed. One of yesterday's women stood near the ribbon display. Her smile didn't quite form. Ethan moved to the fabric counter, reached past Nora, laid his hand on a bolt of deep blue cloth, the same shade as her patchwork dress. My wife prefers this shade. The shopkeeper blinked. How many yards, Mr. Calloway? He looked at Nora. Just at her. As many as she wants. The room was quiet. He kept his hand at her back the entire time. Not showmanship. Just present, warm, still, steady. Outside, sunlight hit her face. Her voice came unsteady. Why are you doing this? Because you came home yesterday thinking I was ashamed of you. He said it plainly, without accusation. I wasn't keeping you from town. I was giving you time to feel safe before the world got back in. 'Cause I should have brought you sooner. Her eyes burned. I don't hide what I'm proud of. Something broke inside, not shattering, not like before. Breaking free, like a window thrown open after a long winter. He had never hidden her. He had been waiting for her to be ready to be seen. And standing there, sun-warmed boards beneath them, his hands still warm at the small of her back, the town watching, Nora understood, being chosen quietly, steadily, without performance or condition, was not hiding. It was the opposite. She stopped calling him Mr. Calloway that night. Not because he asked. Because she wanted to, and that difference, small as it seemed, was everything. Over the days, she began to see the house differently. The fire burning when she came downstairs, not duty. Devotion. The porch chair with its cushion, not furniture. Pension. The loose fence board she had noticed, fixed one morning before she spoke. He had seen it before she said a word. None of it was pity. None obligation. It was choosing. Quiet, steady, deliberate, every day without asking to be noticed. One evening after supper, she didn't retreat to the bedroom. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched him dry the last plate, and something in her chest began to release. Ethan. Turned. You didn't marry me to save me. Not a question. She needed to hear it. No. Then why? He looked at her like he had in the garden that first night, as if she were someone worth his full attention. Because I sat in that town hall and watched Garrett Holloway look at you like property. I heard Thomas Reed tell you it was more than you deserved. A pause, the kind that meant the next words had been waiting. And I knew that if you signed that paper, I would spend the rest of my life outside your fence wishing I had spoken. She didn't move. I didn't marry you to save you, Nora. I married you because I couldn't stand the thought of you belonging to anyone but me. Not a speech. Not performance. Just truth, scraped raw. She crossed the kitchen, took his face, kissed him, and his arms closed around her, completely. One hand behind her head, the other at her waist. Holding her the way she had quietly, privately held herself, believing no one would ever see it. When she could speak, her voice was steady. I love you. Not because you rescued me. Because you saw me before anyone else did. Before I could see myself. He pressed his lips to her forehead. Then stop hiding from me. I'm trying. I know. His arms tightened slightly. I'm not going anywhere. Months passed. The ranch transformed gradually, curtains on every window, herbs in the garden, bread rising on the counter, laughter filling rooms that had known only silence. Nora stopped sewing from scraps. She made a new dress from the blue fabric Ethan had bought her, the bolt he had touched and named as hers in front of everyone. Every stitch deliberate, every seam straight and clean. Not patchwork. Not survival stitched in the dark. A dress made by a woman who had finally begun to believe she deserved something whole. Autumn came. The harvest ball. Nora walked through the front door on Ethan's arm. The blue dress caught the lantern light, and the room turned, not in laughter, not in shock, but with something quieter, uncomfortable. Reckoning. Mrs. Whitmore went pale. Women from the store studied their shoes. Thomas Reed, at the punch table, looked for the first time like he understood what he had thrown away. He found her halfway through the evening. Older, thinner, something gone from his eyes that she didn't need to name. Nora. He cleared his throat. You look. The sentence didn't finish. May I have a dance? She looked at him. The man who had held her waist for 3 seconds and let go. Who had said, too big to hold, loud enough for a room to hear. Who had married her sister and smirked while the town tried to sell her to a widower. No. Not angry. Not wounded. Just certain, the way a woman sounds when she finally stops needing anything from someone. Thomas nodded and walked away. Nora turned to Ethan. His hand extended, patient, unhurried. She took it. They stepped to the center of the floor. The same floor where her card had stayed empty. Where boys had laughed at her curtain dress. Where she had prayed, in the smallest part of herself, for someone to see past what everyone else decided she was. This time she didn't ask if he was comfortable. She stepped into him as she had always belonged. His arms circled her waist, firm, unhesitating, proud, and they danced. Every woman who had whispered he was hiding her watched Ethan hold his wife like she was the only person in the room. Because to him, she was. That night, under stars, she leaned against his shoulder, silence sitting between them without needing to be filled. Do you remember what I asked? That first dance. If I was comfortable holding you, what would you say now? He pulled her closer, arms steady, wagon rolling through the dark. That I have never held anything I was less willing to let go of. She smiled into his warmth. The girl who had stood against a far wall with a shaking card was gone. In her place, a woman who knew the truth. She was never too much to hold. She was exactly what he had been reaching for. And he had signed first, before she could say no, before she could shrink, before the room could take it from her, to prove it. Thank you for watching Ironwood Narratives.